Thanks for joining us here in the evening time in the middle of the week. I know everyone's got a lot of things they could be doing with their life, and appreciate you joining us here tonight to learn about this very important place out there where not a lot of people go. We're going to get you oriented a little bit. We're going to share some background. We're going to share some of the latest, and then we're going to show you how you can take action. So briefly, this event is put on by the Friends of the Inyo in collaboration with Sierra Club. And myself, Manahu, my name is Kris Hohag, Inani Ene Kris Hohag, Bisipu Awe Dunu Agimana, Payahunadu Nu Novidu, Bisipu Awe Dunu Novidu, Nunum Nana, I Bia U Nancy Barlow Naniadu, I Nawa U David Hohag Naniadu, I Mu'a U Catherine Summers Barlow Naniadu, I Dogo U Stephen Barlow Senior Naniadu. And I just wanted to say a quick intro in the language of the land here. I'm coming to you from Bishop, California, in what's known as the Owens Valley on your map. But here in the indigenous language, we know it as Payahunadu, and that's the language I spoke to you. That's Paiute language. And we know that is Numayetaha, and it's in that way we want to acknowledge where we are today. And Conglomerate Mesa is in between the traditional homelands of the Paiute and Shoshone people, very important to both. Those closest being the Lone Pine Paiute Shoshone tribe and the Timbisha Shoshone Nation. We want to show you a lot of gratitude for arriving and being here to learn, and just want to orient you a little bit to where we are. So myself, I'm here in Bishop, and I'm working with the Sierra Club, but I also work with an organization called the Payahunadu Alliance, which is an indigenous-led alliance. And once again, here in Payahunadu in Bishop. So I'd like to let Bryan share a little bit about his work and who he is, and then we'll continue on with the presentation. So take it away, Bryan.
Thanks, Kris. Hey, folks. Like I said earlier, great to see so many recognizable faces and names, whether you're on camera or in the chat. And for those who I don't know, it's great to virtually meet you. My name is Bryan Hatchell. I'm the Desert Policy Associate with Friends of the Inyo. I've been with the team for about 2.5 years now, coming up on 2.5 years. And I do everything from, the grassroots organizing on a number of our desert policy campaigns at Friends of the Inyo to policy analysis and getting down in the weeds of project proposals. And it's great to be here. I think, without a doubt, my favorite part of this work is connecting people with the landscape. And at Conglomerate Mesa, I think we've been so challenged this year with not being able to be together, not being able to be in close quarters with one another, that still being able to have means like this, even though it's virtual, it still means a lot to me, and I hope it means a lot to y'all, because connecting folks with landscapes is what builds that bond and connection, and leads people to want to visit and feel inspired to protect landscapes. So again, or to reiterate what Kris says, very, very grateful to be here with all of you and share this time. And I'll just say before we get too far ahead, just a logistics thing. We're going to record this event because not everyone was able to make it tonight who wanted to. So if you're uncomfortable with the recording and possibly your camera popping up on it, then feel free to turn your camera off. That said, Kris and I are spotlighted for this, so you shouldn't come up. But just wanted to offer that in case you would rather not have your camera on. I believe that covers all of the logistics things. Kris, I'll pass it back to you.
All right, thank you, Bryan. Yeah, so there's our quick little bios there if you want to read, and we're totally more than happy to follow up if you guys have any other questions. In acknowledging the land here, once again, this is Paiute Shoshone or Shoshone Paiute, however you want to say it, homelands in the languages Numa and Nue, and essentially since time immemorial. And we can also throw in there unceded ancestral traditional territories. As we move ahead, we just want to show some pictures of the landscape, because the landscape there might look desolate to some, but As you're going to learn throughout this presentation, it's very rich, and it's always good to couch it in context as well, because um, people will think that this is a dry, desolate landscape, but until relatively recently, that Patsiata, what we know as Owens Lake, was in fact filled with water and usable and a thriving lake. So it seems like a ways for a lot of us, but that is the context of this land. So once again, in more specifics of today's, I guess, politics and nation territories, in particular, this land is closest to the tribal nations of the Death Valley-based Timbisha Shoshone tribal nation and the Lone Pine Paiute Shoshone tribal nation. And both have expressed significant opposition to this project throughout, and continue to, because of its relevance to the culture and history of the people in the past and to today moving forward. So if we want to go ahead and move forward with the slides, we're going to share with you guys just some photos. It's a very vibrant landscape out there. Beautiful trees of many kinds, a lot of Joshua trees. It's a thriving environment for Joshua trees, where much of their habitat is shrinking in other parts of the state and the desert. So we're going to go ahead and continue to show you that there's spectacular views essentially in all directions, 360-degree views, and a lot of solitude, a lot of open space, and just you can really feel the powerful energy of the earth out there. That's one of those things. And as I'd imagine, that's probably why they want to get gold out of there as well. Bryan, maybe you can help me. We'll both articulate the location of Conglomerate Mesa as we look at this overhead map. We're also going to see it in the overflight, the eco flight. But right here is a map. Basically, in the upper left, you have Lone Pine, which is the town entering the Owens Valley. And at the lower left, you have the southern end of Owens Lake. And right in the middle, you have Keeler. And Conglomerate Mesa is kind of right in the heart of all that. And you would see it by either being up on top of Cerro Gordo Peak or coming from Saline Valley Road just to the east. And if you were coming from the southern part of Saline Valley Road, you would be going north, and it would be to your left on the west, northwest or so. And some of our photos will show that approach. But that's essentially where it's located. It is a large mesa. It significantly has a high elevation change from the bottom to the top, and you would feel that if you're hiking it. And we really do recommend as many of you who have an interest to get out there on foot, because it's a special experience. But that's about where it is. On the south, it borders Malpais Mesa, excuse me. And you could see how close it is to Death Valley on the right side there to the east. Bryan, do you want to add anything? Did I miss anything there?
I don't think you missed anything. I'll just build a little bit on kind of what you said, and like Kris pointed out, with Death Valley encompassing really the east, northeast, and southeast, and the Death Valley Wilderness. Then you have the Malpais Mesa Wilderness right to the south, in the Inyo Mountains Wilderness and Cerro Gordo Ghost Town right to the north. So I always kind of make the analogy that Conglomerate Mesa, as far as protected lands go, is kind of the missing donut hole, if you will, in an otherwise largely contiguous protected pastry. So you can use whatever pastry metaphor you choose, I guess, but I find that paints an accurate description of really what Conglomerate Mesa is not and what it should be. And it does have some layer of protection. All of this orange you see here is actually National Conservation Lands, which is a designation meant to preserve the landscapes for its conservation and recreation purposes. And if you're looking at this little green here, that is designated as an area of critical environmental concern, which recognizes some of the sensitive plant species and cultural and historical resources at Conglomerate Mesa. So it does have its conservation values recognized, though not to the extent we think they should be. And we will get more into some of the recent mining threats that are posed at this landscape in a little bit. But yeah, just wanted to connect us to that, and kind of root us in where we're at. So yeah,
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate that. That's why we go at this in a tandem. We could complement one another. Okay, moving forward, we're just going to show you a few more images as we get into the presentation, just to get a sense of what it's like on the ground. You know, a lot of these places off beaten path, a lot of people don't get to experience. You really have to put in quite a bit of effort, as these folks are showing you. But when you get out there, you really will rewarded for what your eyes get to experience and your body gets to experience. And it's just a treat for the spirit. And I think this one is looking west. Those are the Sierras in the background, and that would be the end of the Inyo Mountains coming down in the midground and part of the mesa in the foreground. Is that right, Brian?
spot on.
So,
Yeah.
we'll go ahead and check out the next image, and we're going to move into a portion of the presentation that I just want to cover as a foundation for tonight's narrative. And this is actually a picture of my partner and my baby, and out there enjoying this land and really feeling connected to it. I could tell you my daughter had a heck of a good experience out there. She was just loving it with those Joshua trees. And of course, my partner is from down that area. So this is her traditional homeland, and was just once again feeling very connected to it. Once again, you know, there's a lot of places that we as Native people don't get to go, or have lost touch with through colonization and forced removal in many parts of Turtle Island. And so this is one of those places not a lot of people have a modern day experience with, but once you get out there, you understand why we want this protected and why it's so important. So this is a picture that's very important to us, and once again shows the vibrancy of the land out there. So moving forward, Brian, I just want to go to the next slide. We want to acknowledge the time that we're in. You know, we're in a very emerging time of places we've never been as a collective nation. So we have, as of yesterday, the first Native American Indigenous Secretary of the Interior, Deb Haaland from New Mexico. And we just want to acknowledge that as we move forward through this, because this is the public lands of you know, the federal government that we're talking about. Much of this, BLM is overseeing this, and we've been corresponding with them. And these are the agencies that the mining companies deal with. And so we foresee some significant changes with an Indigenous woman leading this, and the Biden administration showing quite a bit of commitment to moving us as a nation into the future in a good way that's not so based on extractive industries. So on to the next slide, if you will. We want to congratulate Miss Auntie Deb, as we call her in Indian country. Here's a photo that I think really speaks volumes of who she is. This is when she's doing the swearing in Congress, and her whole family is there. So she's representing many generations, and she calls herself a 35th generation, maybe it's 55th generation, probably 500th generation New Mexican, before there was ever New Mexico. So this is a significant step. The Department of Interior was once known as the Department of War, and this was the entity within the federal government chiefly charged with removing and implementing a lot of the injustices that Native tribes still feel today through the traumas in our communities. So moving forward, I just think that's a good foundation for us to share as we talk about what we're doing here today at Conglomerate Mesa. I'm gonna take a breather and let you read real quick. This is a quote I got just today, actually, from Tribal Cultural Resources Monitor down there in Lone Pine, Jeremiah Joseph. So what he said was, as a tribal community, we have seen, learned, and continue to hear about cultural and environmental injustices. By any means necessary, we will preserve and protect the land our ancestors honored for future generations to be able to enjoy. And that's really what this is about, because if this type of project goes through that we're raising awareness of right now, this land won't be there for another generation to enjoy. They will completely decimate this mesa that we're going to share with you today. And Jeremiah, having been out there on the ground himself, having personal experience with this mesa, knows how important it is. And we've also been out there with them and just once again encourage people to experience this place to know why we're advocating so hard for its protection. So this is yeah, the tribal cultural resources monitor down at Lone Pine, Paiute Shoshone tribe. At this point, I want to get into some key definitions so we can understand this project from an Indigenous perspective. Doing our best to represent the local tribes that are there affected and impacted by this affront in their traditional lands. Myself, I speak as an Indigenous person as well, being enrolled just up the land, up the valley a bit, up in the Bishop Paiute tribe I'm a citizen of. And we have some issues as natives we've faced collectively through the system of oppression that's been imposed upon us, through the federal government, through the westward expansion, through many elements of American society. And we just want to get some terminology clear among us so that we can move forward with that common basic understanding. We're not going to go too deep. This isn't a massive class. We're just going to get some basic terms here. So if you will, we'll start with oppression. Oppression essentially is the combination of prejudice and institutional power, which creates a system that discriminates against some groups, often called target groups, in this case, primarily Indigenous people, and benefits from other groups, often called dominant groups. In this case, we'll say mining in general, mining industry. Scholars name 5 types of oppression: violence, exploitation, marginalization, powerlessness, and cultural imperialism. The next term we'll jump into is power. At the level of society and politics, noticing power helps us understand how systems impact people differently, like education, medicine, law, and democracy. At the level of individual power, it helps us pay attention to how systems of power emerge in individual relations and dynamics. Okay, next slide, please. The next term we have is imperialism. It's one particular world system of power, refers to the creation and maintenance of unequal relationships between regional cultures, reinforced by military and economic power. And colonialism, last but not least, colonialism. One particular world system of power, the exploitative historical, political, social, and economic system established when one group or force takes control over a colonized territory or group, the unequal relationship between colonizer and the colonized. So let's go ahead and dive a little deeper into what that means there. Colonialism. It's seen the world over, and we should kind of understand where we are in the world of colonialism here in the United States. Essentially, anyone that's not indigenous to here is a settler in colonialism terminology. As it relates to our topic today, though, a way to explain it is as in British colonialism in the United States, or in Australia, as in y'all never left, like the colonizer, that is, I guess we wouldn't necessarily call slaves or other people that were brought here forcefully, but in the society as it relates today, everyone is settlers other than the indigenous people. So that's an explanation there. What's more specific to this situation is extractive colonialism. And in case you haven't been made aware yet, K2 Gold, also known as Mojave Precious Metals, is a Vancouver, Canada, BC-based company. So we're dealing with a non-American company in this case, a non-US company coming in to do this type of project and then leave with essentially their riches. So extractive colonialism equates to, as in British colonialism in India, when the greater political power draws on the resources of a place with less power. So like you left, but you still left the mess behind from an indigenous perspective. Okay, so moving forward, in an economy that is based on extraction from the land, who holds allegiance to the land? Who will protect the land? Who speaks for those without voices in a system like this that bases our economic, political power based on extraction from the land? The next slide is from a native artist locally, Topa Spoon Hunter, highlighting just I think the worthiness, the valueness of these plants and animals in their own right, their right to exist. In this case, it's Joshua Tree getting highlighted in that landscape out there. These Joshua Tree thrive in this landscape, and there's not many places they're thriving these days. In fact, they're an endangered species. Conglomerate Mesa is one of those places that they feel very comfortable. In fact, they're thriving. And I can't help but equate Joshua trees to native people as I hear them being talked about and counted and just being planned around. But this is an awesome picture that was taken while we were out there as well, with this Joshua tree that looked to me like an eagle overlooking the mesa. And I think we'll leave you with this. Appreciate your attention, you listening, and enjoy the views as we move into the eco flight. Bryan, you ready to take over? All right.
Yeah, thanks for that, Kris. That was lovely. And we're going to jump here into a 5-minute virtual tour in an airplane over Conglomerate Mesa, so we can get a good look from the sky, really, of what this landscape looks like and just how close it is to the rural community of Lone Pine and the town of Keeler, even closer to the town of Keeler. And I always like to share that as the crow flies, the town of Keeler is only about 5 miles downhill from where the mesa is. So they're incredibly close, though it's not necessarily easy to get there from Keeler. It is close. So I'm going to stop talking and play the video because I talk enough in this video. So you will see me actually wearing the same hat. So if I could call on just a participant or two to give me a thumbs up to make sure you're seeing the sound. Libby, I see you, and Tiffany, I see you. If you could just give me one of those, making sure that the volume's coming through okay for you. So I'm going to click play now.
Hey folks, thanks for joining us on this eco flight. Today we're flying over Conglomerate Mesa, public land managed by the Bureau of Land Management and designated as national conservation lands, meaning that this area is to be protected for its conservation and recreation values. Now, Conglomerate Mesa, for those who don't know, is right on the edge of Death Valley National Park, no more than a mile distance between the two boundaries. Conglomerate Mesa is right off of Saline Valley Road, which is a very beloved recreation site for solitude seekers, for off-roaders, for scientists and researchers alike.
So Bryan, I think that's Conglomerate Mesa. Help me understand a little more about exactly where we are.
Conglomerate Mesa is truly special for a variety of reasons. First and foremost, it possesses immense significance to the local Native American tribes in Inyo County, the Timbisha Shoshone tribe and the Lone Pine Paiute Shoshone tribes. This is their ancestral homeland, and the site is still visited often to this day. And it's also used for opinion gathering site to this day. So it has incredible amounts of significance to the local Native American tribes here. There's also a variety of rare plants like the Inyo rock daisy and the California monkey flower.
Looks a little like Joshua Tree National Park.
That's right, Bruce. And the beloved Joshua Tree too is there. It's truly rich in history, it's rich in culture, and it's rich in rare plants and wildlife. There's a number of blue-bellied lizards that scurry around the land, and there's even been some sightings of desert bighorn sheep in the past. Many people love going to Conglomerate Mesa for the solitude. It is a bit of a tuck-away spot that is challenging to get to. You'll need a 4x4 vehicle with good clearance, but for those who get there, you can experience true desert solitude. It's important to note that Conglomerate Mesa is a completely roadless area. And while it's not a wilderness area, it does possess a lot of the characteristics that many people have come to know in desert wilderness. And I think that's, important to keep in mind, and it's good for helping frame in all of our minds, what exactly this area looks like and the importance it holds.
Well, it's sure spectacular out of here with vast areas with no roads, etc. I'm not sure what kind of protection, if any, does it have any?
Even with all of these beloved conservation features and the immense importance to the local Native Americans and the folks who come to enjoy this place today, Conglomerate Mesa has seen on and off interest from mining companies throughout the last 3 decades. And more recently, there's a company here looking to do gold exploration. They're called K2 Gold. They're from Vancouver, Canada. And right now they are working off of an already approved helicopter access only gold exploration plan. K2 Gold has a plan for road construction into Conglomerate Mesa and to do over 100 drill holes sampling the gold prospects in the area. From what I've mentioned earlier and from anyone's testimony who you talk to who visits out here, they'll tell you why Conglomerate Mesa is just not the right place for this kind of activity, and it needs to be protected. So there are many great ways to take action right now. One thing that a number of folks have started doing is signing a change petition that simply states you support protecting Conglomerate Mesa from mining destruction and you support protecting it for its conservation and recreation values. Now, if you want to keep in touch with Friends of the Inyo, or you want to keep your thumb on the pulse of this campaign, a great way to do that is to subscribe to the Friends of the Inyo newsletter. We send out all Conglomerate Mesa related updates to this list, and you'll know what K2 Gold is doing up there with the mining, and you'll know what you can do to raise your voice and stick up for our public lands. Well, I think that concludes our virtual flyover today. I appreciate being looped into this and taken along for the virtual ride. I thank everyone for joining us, and again, follow along with Friends of the Inyo and subscribe, or maybe even become a member, and you'll stay up to date with all the Conglomerate Mesa activities. Thanks, y'all.
All right. Well, I hope that was informative. I appreciate the claps, y'all. That's nice. You know, I had something in my mind I wanted to share, but it's slipping my mind right now. But that's okay. We can. If this will click on. We don't want to do it again. There we go. Okay. Well, but between Kris and I kind of want to run through some of the values from whether it's a geology perspective, plants perspective, or cultural resources, even historic mining from the early to mid 1800s. And I think it'd just be a good idea to kind of run through that and recap some of that. And I can kick us off with just the plants right here, because we have this beautiful shot of the Indian paintbrush, the red flower, and the Joshua tree. And Kris kind of alluded to this earlier, but Conglomerate Mesa is ranges from about 3,800 feet in elevation, 3,800, all the way up to 7,700 feet in elevation. It's this unique transition zone, as you may have seen on the map, between Death Valley and the Inyo Mountains. And I know a number of you probably know Death Valley comes from the lowest elevation point in the contiguous 48 states and sweeps up into the high Inyo Mountains. So to have this type of arid desert climate that ranges in such an elevation, it provides this incredible sanctuary for a number of rare and unique desert plants. Like the Joshua tree may not be considered rare, but I would say it is threatened given the current warming of the climate and us losing Joshua trees at lower elevation. But you heard mention of the rocky cliff sides of the mesa. And though you don't see an abundance of large mammal wildlife, they are there. It is a common mule deer migration corridor. And I would say if you were to see a desert bighorn sheep out there, you would be extremely lucky. But it's a thing that's on the rumor mill that I know a couple people claim to have sighted desert bighorn sheep in the area. And I wouldn't be surprised, just given how quiet and how much solitude there is. And if they're running up to higher elevation locations, makes sense as to why they would want to go through the mesa, but they wouldn't stay because there's not that much water there. Kris, can I kick it back to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as Bryan was mentioning, this kind of midway zone between Death Valley moving towards the Sierras, where there was historically just over the hill, Owens Lake, a really large saline lake. There would make this place a highly culturally sensitive region. It's a really special place with the plants and the animals. In fact, it's very much thriving there. And so we just need to push back a little bit when the K2 Gold Company claims that there's very minimal archaeological significance out there in that region, because just based on the geology, the animals, the plants, that leads to a lot of cultural resources out on that landscape. It's extremely beautiful, vibrant, and productive. Also, once again, within the recap frame, the proximity to protected lands here at Conglomerate Mesa, it's essentially a donut of unprotected lands, surrounded by a donut hole, excuse me, of unprotected and a donut of protected land. So we believe there needs to be extra protection to make sure that this doesn't happen in the future. I do totally agree with that comment, actually. They do not have to be artifacts for it to be culturally significant, but just based on what people are looking for, some people see nothing there and other people see a lot there. And I think that's one of the differences in perspective between the mine and company itself and the tribes and others. Bryan, would you like to take it from here?
Sure thing. And if I could, I know we've been talking a little bit abstractly about this mining company, and we haven't set aside a specific slide for it. So I just want to give folks a quick ramp up, especially before this other quick video we show you about some of the mining interests that have been popping up around this area. And it started really in the late 80s, where we saw some prospectors floating around, nothing too terribly serious. Until the 90s, when one of the biggest mining companies, BHP at the time, came in and did some exploration up here. But they reclaimed all of their work. You can see where they carved a now reclaimed and restored road, just faintly. You have to know where to look. But there's been sort of an on and off interest in exploration here, just the same as there's been a completely on and never off interest in protecting this landscape. And recently, starting in early 2019, or at least that's when it came to my radar, or excuse me, I should say late 2019, this company, K2 Gold from Vancouver, started coming around. And they are basically a one-person outfit with a CEO slash salesman of sorts. And they've assembled their team of investors relations and contracting out geologists, and they have actually taken up root here in the town of Lone Pine through their subsidiary Mojave Precious Metals, and they have office in the Chamber of Commerce here. One other thing I'll mention just before we get to the next video is that they did complete a helicopter access only drilling plan in the fall, in October and November, where they did 16 total holes at 4 locations, so 4 holes at each spot. And like that last video mentioned, they are ramping up for so much more than that. I would estimate 5 to 7 miles of road construction. And last I heard from their own investor presentations, they're looking at about 120 drill holes. So we're talking about a significant impact that this land has never seen before. But we have chances to stop it. It's not all doom and gloom. So I'm going to jump us into the next video. And Kris, do you want to say something about this? It's another piece of token.
Oh, yeah, just continue on. Yeah, we just want to emphasize not the right site, not the right kind of mining. And, we believe that this place has a right to exist for its inherent value here. So these are just a few slides to emphasize that. Those who aren't going to have a voice out there. So who represents the voice for the voiceless? And we'll get into that, Phil.
Yeah, and just to contextualize you here, I think you should be able to see my mouse, but down past this little globe mallow right here and past what we like to call the bowl of the mesa, you'll see this other little flat top right here. And that is the Malpai Mesa Wilderness Area. And it really just shows how close you are to these other protected landscapes that are protected for the rest of time and deserve to be. And then again, Eastern Sierra right here in the back, and you can't see it from this angle, but the Owens Lake in all of its opals and sunburst oranges kind of peers out from this spot right here and some of these ridge lines that you can get up on. Okay.
We don't need mines coming in, dumping chemicals and destroying the place.
Mining companies have been coming around the mesa since the late 1980s. K2 Gold, the company now, wants to gain approval from the Bureau of Land Management for 5 to 7 miles of road construction and over 100 new drill holes.
Conglomerate Mesa is located between Death Valley National Park and the Eastern Sierra.
If this mine were to be built and the Joshua trees were to be lost, that would be lost habitat for all of the animals that rely on them.
Conglomerate Mesa is going to be absolutely critical. This land is a necessary refuge for Joshua trees due to its high elevation. And it even has an area of critical environmental concern to, in this case, protect a plant called the Inyo rock daisy.
The Inyo rock daisy, just super, super rare. It's like the poster child for Conglomerate Mesa.
There's artifacts everywhere. You don't really have any other means of survival on poor little towns in the Eastern Sierra than tourism. If they destroy the land, who's going to want to come visit this place?
As far as the open pit mine goes, it's going to impact so much more than just the site itself. You'll be able to see it from Mount Whitney. You'll be able to see it from Cerro Gordo. And that operation would be so huge that there would be impacts to Saline Valley Road, which is a major access point for Death Valley National Park.
It's like David versus Goliath, you know, like it's happening right here in my backyard. How do I need to convince that to anybody how much of a step backwards it is? I just don't see any real benefit for the community, for our economic system that's going to be continue failing. So why now? You know, like this place is so significant, like historically and culturally, like there's so much here to protect and preserve.
It's hard enough now with what they've done with this land. And my family's been in this valley for thousands and thousands of years. We've survived here by taking care of it. Outsiders have only been here a little over 100 years. We need your help to stop their destruction.
Pass it back real quick. I do want to recognize, the folks that really helped us make these videos. And if that didn't get you fired up, I don't know what will, other than being on the landscape itself. But, you saw Jeremiah towards the end of that video, who Kris quoted in the beginning of this presentation, and our good friend Kathy Bancroft at the Lone Pine Paiute Tribe. She's the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer. And then the person who I would give the crown to for most time spent at the Mesa in the last 10 years is Maria Jesus, and she's a all-around conservation pro, and specifically she's a botanist, and she's an absolute rock star. So just want to shout those folks out, and then also because I didn't get a chance to earlier, I have to give a huge shout out to EcoFlight for making that overflight video. They were a big help in getting folks connected to the landscape in the pandemic, and showing these overflight shots and whatnot. So if you don't know who EcoFlight is, I highly suggest you go check them out, because they do great work for the conservation community. Kris?
Yeah, thank you, Bryan. Thank you to all of those people you just mentioned. Very powerful video, got me tearing up here. But really fired up, as you said. Let me just recap briefly some of the points in these last two videos as we move forward. Once again, just extremely culturally significant site to local indigenous people. And I think we really have to question this company. How will this benefit us locally, as opposed to your financial shell game of blowing this up to your investors to sell it for $500 million or whatever they want to get. This hadn't been done before. They're repeating a model, as far as we can tell. A business model. So it's one of those things where, how will this really benefit us locally in the long run? We don't see that. Respect for tribal perspectives. We don't think they're seeing the value of the land for what it actually is. Native people have been here for thousands of years and have survived by taking care of the land, not by destroying it. As Kathy alluded to, many places have been significantly scarred in just over 100 years of outsiders in the region. So we were asking people to basically align with the Native people and continuing to take care of this land for future generations to come. We are in this together, and we need this together to protect Conglomerate Mesa. And in this particular instance, this is an opportunity for us to create a new economic-based future in the Eastern Sierra, one that is based on respect for nature and not, as I would say, an economy based upon that really started in 1849. This is no different than that. And gold is at its highest point, but we can be a model to do something different in our region with the will and the information and the knowledge. We believe we have the resources to do that. So thank you, Bryan, for that. Let's go ahead and open it up, I guess, to questions. Is that where we're at?
Yeah, and I think the way we'll do this is we'll have folks pop any questions they have in the comment box. We've got a big crowd today, so it just wouldn't be efficient to have people on mute. So please fire away some questions with the understanding that we're going to dive a little bit more into what exactly these open pit mines look like in just a moment here. So please, anything about values or just anything we've shared. And I'll start with one question, which just says, "What's in it for BLM?" I think really BLM is just hoping not to get sued by anybody on this. There are a lot of eyes on this, whether it's the mining industry or the conservation community. I think they want to do their due diligence to protect the resources as the land designations dictate, while also abiding by the antiquated and outdated 1872 mining law. It's unfortunate how much sway that outdated law has over land management, but it's a real fact that BLM has to grapple with. So I don't think anything is in it for the BLM, and they by no means pick a side, in my opinions. Now, certain field offices could sway a certain direction and how strictly they enforce conservation actions, but I think the Ridgecrest office actually does a great job at what they do. But they have to hear from folks and understand what their passion is for the landscape. Marjorie asks, what kind of legislative protection are we seeking? I wouldn't say that we have any specific track yet. We do know that the momentum and the support is there for the area to be permanently protected. At the very baseline level, I would say we want to see the National Conservation Lands status that the Mesa already has upheld to protect this area. But we know that we need to take another step because these mining companies aren't going to stop coming unless this area is protected. But that said, no specific designation just yet, but we are capturing general support from the local populace and really all Americans, all citizens for protecting this area. Patricia, we'll get into water resources here in a moment. And Phil asks, where does the project stand now? K2 Gold has submitted a new plan to the Ridgecrest BLM requesting that road construction, like we've mentioned, 5 to 7 miles and roughly 120 drill holes. The BLM has other projects in their queue right now for what they have to conduct environmental assessments for. So I'd say we've got about a month to a month and a half before we see anything formally from the BLM, whether that's an environmental assessment or what's called scoping, which is basically just open season on share your opinions and what you think about this landscape. So I've been telling people mid-April is when we may see something, but these federal agency timelines can fluctuate and the can get kicked down the road. I think the best thing to do is to follow along with the Sierra Club and Friends of the Inyo, and you'll be able to get all the updates from here. And I'll kind of wrap it up with this, and then we'll bump along because I do want to get to the Castle Mountain mine comparison. The petition is the big thing you can do right now. If you are a local Inyo County citizen, if you feel inclined to just send an email to your supervisor expressing your opinion on this project, I think that's something you can do. And then when the time comes, really, when the rubber meets the road, it is that environmental assessment comment period, which you will undoubtedly be hearing from the Sierra Club and Friends of the Inyo on. Kris, do you have anything you'd like to add before we move on? Any questions you wanted to address? I've just kind of been firing away.
Yeah. I'll just briefly address two. The Dog and Pony Show, I really encourage you all to go, that K2 is giving on March 24th. You can go to mojavePreciousMetals.com and register. And then Shan, regarding your question, primarily it's definitely been Timbishaw and Lone Pine, but I know some of the other TIPOs are informed and engaged. It would be great for leadership and councils from any of the other tribes in the valley to send letters to the BLM. We feel like the BLM is the primary target right now outside of the company, but the company has obviously dollar signs in their eyes, and based on the most recent article is coming full force for anyone opposed to this project. So we have to mobilize and coordinate, in particular anyone who has resources to throw at the project. So yeah, please take it to your tribal councils and get some letters, and you can be in touch on what to do next from there. Do you want to hit any other questions, or should we continue on? Great questions, everybody.
Yeah, let's continue along because we will have another section for questions, and we can just basically take it to 7:30, which for folks who don't know, that's we'll go into about 7:30 with this project or with this presentation. Okay, so this again is a view that we had similar when we were looking at that globe mallow, the orange flower, and I pointed out that you know, the Malpine Mesa Wilderness is right here in the background, and you can see the snow-capped Sierra Nevada, Sierra Mountains right here in the back. And just kind of sneaked behind this slope a little bit ways down is the Owens Lake, which if you're over here, I hope you can see my mouse, but I'm kind of guiding you through different areas. But if you're over here on the southern end on where my mouse is, you can very clearly see down in the Owens Lake. And we call this the bowl of the mesa because it just sweeps out into this expanse of Joshua trees and junipers and pinyon pines. And it just kind of, it's not a long hike to this ridge line where you get this view from the bowl, maybe about 1.5 miles and about 800 feet of elevation gain. But boy, is it worth it. The air just is a little different up there. And, you know, when we think about K2 Gold and their mining proposal, I really encourage all of us to have some perspective on what they're enabling, you know, what they are moving forward. Because when they first came to town, they kept saying, oh, we just want to do a little drilling up the hill there. Like, it's not that big of a deal. We just want to do some drilling. Will you let us? And it's not just a little bit of drilling. It's activity that, if allowed to go forward, could lead to a subsequent open pit cyanide heap leach gold mine, where all of these things that you're seeing could potentially be lost. And I just like to show this picture because I always wonder, is this what the Mesa could become? And I think if the people don't take action, if the people don't make their voices heard to the Ridgecrest BLM and to this company, they will keep moving forward with this. And we could blink our eyes, and one of these giant mining companies that have the means to bull rush communities with their projects, they will. And we have to stand up now in every step of the way coming forward. So I'm going to show you just some learnings from the Castle Mountain mine. This is not a presentation meant to cast any judgment on the Castle Mountain mine. It is not something I've worked on personally, but there are comparable just factual information of you know, what the mine uses, whether it's amount of land impacted or water they consume. And I think it's important, or even just what an open pit mine looks like. And that perspective is important because we can shift it to the Mesa and say, okay, what would happen if it looked like this? What would happen if we used this amount of water? So that's why we're doing this. It's not, this is not the Bash Castle Mountain Mine show. So I just wanted to make that clear. We're making this opposition so we can understand these comparisons, so we can understand the nature of what these open pit mines look like, whether it's the visuals, the water impacts or requirements, and the boom and bust nature of a lot of these mines. And the reason we're looking at the Castle Mountain mine is because of some recent quotes from the company. Again, you know, when they first got here, they kept saying, oh, we're just looking at a little bit of exploration, when always in our heads, we know, no, you want to advance this work so you can sell your company and your mineral claims to a larger group that can move forward with the open pit mine operation. And this comes from the K2 Gold CEO himself. If you want to watch the YouTube video yourself and catch the quote, I linked it right there, where he says, He's referring to an individual. He said he had Equinox's mine at Castle Mountain, which is really our flag bearer for what we expect or what we're anticipating. And when I hear that, I'm like, okay, well, that is at least confirming that this would be an open pit operation with cyanide use like the Castle Mountain mine. And additionally, their investors relations manager said in two separate videos, actually, we have a potential open pit target. It's oxidized, so very simple heap leach. This is an open pit target. I don't know about you, but I don't think there's anything very simple about a cyanide heap leach mine, especially with these social implications that branch out from it. So I thought that was interesting, but it's good. I'm glad they said it because it really contextualizes what would this landscape could become. And this here is an aerial view of the open pit mine at Castle Mountain. And we just saw the aerial view of Conglomerate Mesa. I think I can speak for a number of folks in this group today that it would be heartbreaking if the Mesa turned into something like this. And it's why we have to be active now and standing up every step of the way. So I have this big three of sorts that I want to use the Castle Mountain mine to contextualize what a Conglomerate Mesa mine could look like. And I'm not speaking in absolutes here. These are estimations. We won't ever exactly know until that proposal comes up, but we do know to an extent, what we're looking at and what we're facing. So let's talk about water. Open pit mine water use at the Castle Mountain mine uses or is permitted to use 625 acre feet a year, which equates to 203 million gallons of water every year. For a little bit of perspective, I did some just fun math here. That's 4.8 million baths a year. That is 10.1 million loads of laundry, or 1.6 million times watering your lawn. And additionally, just off a rough calculation, the city of Bishop uses about, I'd say 750 to 800 million gallons, or sorry, a little bit more. They're pushing about a billion gallons of water a year. The city of Bishop does here in Inyo County. So to have a mine that uses roughly 1/6 of the water consumption of the only incorporated town in your county is also a little bit head scratching. And for folks who don't know, we don't exactly have water to spare here in Inyo and Mono County and in the Eastern Sierra because this is a topic for a whole nother presentation, but the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power owns the majority of the water here to the extent that we can't grow as a community. We can't build new buildings. We barely have enough water to remain in stasis. So the idea of where water would come from for a open pit cyanide heap leach mine is a massive question mark, logistical question mark. You could put the environmental things aside. If you don't care about plants and animals, I'm sure you care about water. Where would that come from? And why, if we will never have water for this project, would we carve Conglomerate Mesa up with roads, one of our last truly wild lands, for a project that is logistically folly? That to me is a thought process I grapple with a lot, and that I think about a lot.
Yeah.
And I realize, oh yeah, go ahead, Kris.
Oh, I just wanted to add, not to mention the dust problems that are already down there, and how this toxic dust would just be added to the dust that's already a huge problem in southern Inyo County for the people's health.
Absolutely, and I realize I put USGS here because there's a USGS study that I'm happy to send to folks that actually estimates mines that would produce more than what the Castle Mountain mine produces. They say roughly 5 metric ton output of gold a year. They would use anywhere between 500 million to 1.2 billion gallons of water a year. And this is USGS study. But as we see, some mines may use a little bit less. They may not be producing that much gold. So where would they get the water for a project here at Conglomerate Mesa? Where would K2 Gold or whatever company they sell their mineral claims to get the water? I see 2 realistic options and then a third joking option, which I will expand on. They could, one, drill wells into sensitive high desert aquifers. There is a lot that I do not know about the water table there that other folks who are hydrologist experts have shared with me. It is simply not a good idea to start drilling 1,000-foot deep wells into the ground to tap water tables that, again, could bleed down to the town of Keeler and to other areas in Saline Valley. That is, talk about another just absolutely uh, insurmountable feat of infrastructure that the land would have to endure to acquire water for this project. And then secondly, the mining company could go to the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. If you know anything about our water struggles here in Inyo County, we barely have enough to remain in our way of lives and actually consistently fight battles to make sure that ranchers have water, make sure that businesses are getting what they need, and that can be a blessing and a curse. And the reason it is sometimes a blessing, in very rare occasions, is you see the Lone Pine Golf Course here. K2 Gold learned a very interesting lesson back in October when they were getting ready for their helicopter drilling. The company was trying to find water for this project. The town of Keeler wasn't interested in selling them any water, and outside of them and a couple of random private wells that no one really seems to know about, there's nowhere to get water from. There's no private water to sell. So K2 Gold and their employees went to the Lone Pine Golf Course and got permission from one of the managers there, the owner of the golf course, to fill up their drums, their water gallon drums from a water hazard, a little pond on the golf course. Given, I guess LADWP has eyes everywhere, or people fully understand that the water here is so sensitive, that LADWP got a phone call. And someone must have said something to the tune of, hey, these people are getting water in these big drums out of the Lone Pine Golf Course. What is going on? And naturally, LADWP got on the phone to the company and said, put that back. And so K2 Gold, with their multiple 50-gallon drums of water filled up, had to go and pour it back into the pond. And now locally it's dubbed as Pond Gate, and it's kind of a whole little chuckle thing now, but there's an overarching message here of, if it's a scrap and a fight for just that much amount of water, and we're talking about 5 or 6 50-gallon barrel drums, imagine what the open pit mine would be. Imagine how big of a fight that would be. And to me, that seems like it's like an ant versus a boot. It's there's no real chance. So again, I come back to this question of why impact the mesa with the amount of drilling and exploration they want to do for something that could be folly from the beginning. And Kris mentioned this in the beginning, but Payahunadu is the name of the Owens Valley, commonly known as the Owens Valley here. And I just want to pose in the chat real quick, does anybody know what Payahunadu means in English words? Let's see if I can get the chat to pop back up. There we go. Seeing a few folks getting it. It's the land or place of flowing water. And that has significantly changed since the water has been taken from this valley over the last 150 years or so. But I think the principle remains true, that water is the way of life. Water is the earth's blood in a way. And we can't, in the Owens Valley of all places, in the Eastern Sierra, in the California desert, we can't afford another straw plucking out from the aquifers or the aqueduct or wherever they may try to go. And now I'll bleed us over into the aerial perspective of what an open pit mine looks like. And I shouldn't say aerial, just a photograph perspective of what open pit mines look like, specifically the Castle Mountain mine. So this is just a about 55-second long film, or like time lapse of sorts, that I'll show y'all real quick, just to see what the operations of an open pit look like. And imagine, that amazing cliffside we saw at Conglomerate Mesa. I would implore you to imagine this happening on that landscape. So that's a little bit of what it looks like when they at least carve down into the pits and then do their backfilling, which is required by California regulation. There's no reclaiming an open pit. You can throw dirt back over it, but it's gone. It's not what it was, and everything. Someone's unhappy with the musical accompaniment of that destruction, that's a funny comment. Yeah, it was a funny position. But anyways, yeah, there's no coming back from it. There's truly not. I mean, we don't want to watch that again. Let's move forward. There we go. Um, and here's a little bit of perspective of just, again, the Castle Mountain mine, what some of these different sections within the mine look like, whether it's the leach pad or an old heap leach pad, and the roads. And of course, all the leach pads are incredibly concerning. But I think about too the haul roads, because the haul roads are the big thing that make this project go from something that is relatively isolated and in a pocket to expanding out into so many different areas that we all love to play and explore. Jane, a heap leach pad is where they put the piles of ore and then spray a water cyanide mix solution over the ore that they've taken from the open pits. And it dilutes it down and basically disintegrates the ore. And the gold is of a substance that the cyanide mixture does not destroy the gold. So you kind of end up with the gold at the bottom of the pad in a little mesh netting. It catches it of sorts. That's not exactly a perfect scientific explanation, but more or less you can get the gist of how that works. But the haul roads, yeah, that for the Mesa, that terrifies me, for the Saline Valley area and the Santa Rosa Flat and Death Valley as well. Here's just a couple of other photos to really kind of put in perspective what these operations look like. Okay. Well, after looking at those photos, I do want to bleed us into, or transition us to, our third and final kind of prong of this work, and the Castle Mountain Mine, talking about that in the context of Conglomerate Mesa and what the community here might have to withstand if this operation goes into place. Boom and bust mining is something that we've grappled with on and off again in Inyo County, all throughout the California desert. Companies come in praising, singing praise of jobs and prosperity, and this is the next big thing that will save our small towns. And only to behold, either the price of what they're looking to mine drops significantly and they leave, or the companies go bankrupt and they don't reclaim their work. There are a number of open pit mines, some active, some on and off again, some completely inactive, that are mostly just sitting there as empty pits, not being used, and landscapes lost forever. And you look here, the Castle Mountain Mine produced gold from 1992 to 2004. It started its construction in 1990, and construction took about 2 years. So for 12 years, it produced gold. But the kicker is that they stopped and abandoned the project when gold prices got low. And this isn't just the Castle Mountain Mine, it's mines all across the country. Gold prices go low and folks get out of Dodge, and this pit is just sitting there. They may tinker some trucks around and stuff and do some mild maintenance there so they don't have to fully reclaim it at that moment in time. But the Castle Mountain Mine, for example, sat relatively empty. Maybe some trucks were pedaling through doing some minor stuff, but relatively inactive from 2004 to 2017. And the price of gold fluctuates as does markets and whatnot from day to day. But when I checked this morning on a chart, this late winter, gold is a tad over $1,700 an ounce. Historical highs, I think, are about $2,100 an ounce. And it can get down to just the hundreds sometimes, and the low thousands. So golds are at an all-time high right now, or they were, and they're slowly decreasing, but they are still very high. And that's a reason we're seeing exploration and mines being progressed across the country. And it's why we're seeing this level of interest in Conglomerate Mesa. And it doesn't help that, again, to quote the CEO in one of his first videos I saw on YouTube, one of their investor videos, I think the second thing he said was gold is on an absolute tear right now. So we think we have a real opportunity. And if that tells me anything, it tells me that they're here because of the financial opportunity for themselves and not for the betterment of the local community, which is the song that they like to sing now that they're here. And we've kind of covered this, so I don't feel a need to recap that. But these are my friends Claire and Alex. We went on a running trip to the Mesa one day, and we're looking at one of the old claims that someone staked into the ground. And within this little tin is actually a paper that gets filed at the Independence County Clerk's office. It's an interesting process, staking claims. And if you're an explorer of the California desert, you will see a lot of these. Now, I don't believe Conglomerate Mesa is going to be an underground mine at all, but we'll likely have a lot of these fence boundaries put up on area that I will remind you is public land and national conservation land. And here is a map of just some of the open pit gold mines across the country. I know it's a little bit small, so bear with me. And some of these are not active anymore, and some are. I believe the Mesquite mine close down here to the southern border is still active. And the Briggs mine is, they are so on and off again. And it's tough to even use the word on because I feel like they fall into the category of they move a couple of trucks around so they don't have to reclaim their work and call it a day, call it activity. And I do want to call attention to something that happens in a lot of areas that we are specifically seeing now through the pandemic, and it's the company using the hardships of the pandemic as cover for coming into this town and trying to sell people on their idea. They are coming and selling these promises of prosperity, of, oh, we're going to provide you jobs, we're going to provide money to the town. Which I will remind you, we keep mentioning this 1872 mining law. By that law, mining companies are required to pay 0% royalties on what they mine to the United States. Now, even with oil and gas, with all of those roses and thorns, if you will, they at least pay anywhere between 12% and 25% in royalties on what they take out of U.S. land or U.S. waters, however you'd like to call it. And even at that, I won't get too terribly into this because I do want to move on for questions. But there's a big difference between local jobs that are provided and jobs that are imported to the area. I think when people think about jobs and an increase in jobs, I follow up with the question of, okay, we've increased our jobs, but are these your neighbors from down the street? Or are these contractors from Montana or from another area importing their workers? And really something I've learned over the coming months is the majority of the local jobs that would come for a larger open pit operation like this are in the construction phase, which in the Castle Mountain's sake lasted only about 2 years because it's a lot of unskilled labor, a lot of truck driving, a lot of moving equipment from point X to point B. But when you move on to the actual heart of the operation for these open pit mines that are the majority of their time active, it takes contracted workers. It takes folks with hyper specific skills, and oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, these jobs are brought in from another area. And I will turn on a light here in a moment. The sun is set on me here in the Owens Valley, so it has gotten darker in my dimly lit home. So I will adjust that here in a moment. But before I do that, I will just say, yes, we are going through a tough time. Yes, in the Eastern Sierra, we need to, in Inyo County, we need to bolster ourselves in ways that don't make us completely dependent on tourism. But it needs to be in ways that are not only sustainable, but dare I say regenerative, that build the land back better and grow. Sustaining is nice and everything. You're not in the red, but you're not growing back. You're not becoming better. So that is really my challenge is how can we make our economy better in a regenerative way and not in what I would call a short-sighted, short-term, um, detracting sort of way. So that's my challenge. And forgive me for 1 second. I'm going to turn a light on so you can see me better.
Right. Thanks, Bryan. Yeah, I for one am one who also, I'd like to add that we can definitely reimagine a new element to our economy. It's this boom and bust is largely sold to us, and I believe that we can create another type of economy that is based on protecting these lands and really, you know, taking advantage, if you will, of the people that love this place. And there's a lot of work to be done to regenerate this place in the name of land and water. And this is the type of place that could really thrive from that.
Yeah, well said, Kris. So we're getting towards the end of our presentation, and I want to leave time for some questions to take us home. But I will just recap here what K2 Gold and their subsidiary Mojave Precious Metals next plan is. Well, first and foremost, we know that their exploration plan is enabling the possibility of an open pit cyanide gold mine. There's no skirting that fact. There's no getting around it. We know this for certain. They want to build 5 to 7 miles of brand new roads into a roadless area intended for conservation, and that a lot of the local community has spoken out against. And I'll say that there will be public comment. We are not there yet, but best believe if you're following along with the Sierra Club and Friends of the Inyo and Kris and myself, you will hear from us. And I would just ask that you're ready. Ready to make your voice heard and speak your truth, whatever that truth may be. And if you ever need information, Kris and I are here to provide that for you and help contextualize this project a little bit more and the landscape and what we stand to lose and will stand up for. And again, just wanted to show you one more time Conglomerate Mesa, at least on a map. Oh, and because we did mention this, I hope everyone will mark it on their calendars. March 24th at 6 p.m. Mojave Precious Metals is hosting a online community town hall. Now, I will say confidently that this is not just for local folks. These are public lands after all. We as tax-paying Americans all collectively own public land, so all of our voices matter on this. So please don't think for a second that what you have to say or your opinion is not important on this project, because it is. And you can go to their Eventbrite link, which I put here, and you can screenshot that. We'll also send it around to folks. I can drop it in the comment box so you don't have to try to get all the forward slashes and whatnot and attend. And I'm not going to tell you what to say. I wouldn't be so bold. I would just say to ask the questions that come from your heart. And say what you feel to say in an appropriate way. Got to be constructive. All right, and we've already recapped that, but we will also send around the Protect Conglomerate Mesa Change petition. Okay. So we'll stop there. I've been talking way too much. I would love to hear some questions for folks, for either Kris or myself.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can start with Andre's question. Do you vision this fight more of a state fight or a federal fight? Certainly more of a federal fight because it is federal Bureau of Land Management managed land. I do know that the state and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife has taken a keen interest in this project because of their state listing of the Joshua Tree, or at least it's being reviewed for candidacy for the next year. So I would recommend, or not recommend, but I would say that the federal side is much more important, though I know that the state is going to make their voices heard on this. And please feel free to fire away in the comment box there, but I will scroll up and see if any folks drop things in while we were presenting.
Yeah, I was looking at the same thing. I wanted to recognize Daniel Burnett's question: can the president, by executive order, make this part of Death Valley? Would that prevent mining? I guess you'd have to talk to someone smarter than myself, but I would think the president could protect this place. And as far as mining, I know we have a lot of work ahead of us reforming the 1872 Mining Act. So right now, mining is seen as the highest use of public lands. I think it's time that we revise that from a tribal perspective. 1872 was a long time ago, and we were a different society back then. So I think it's about time we bring that 150 years forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess for a point of clarification, the Biden likely cannot sign into by executive order, in addition to Death Valley National Park. There are things he can do through the Antiquities Act to make it a national monument. Whether that's appropriate for this landscape or not, that's something that still needs to be discussed. But I will say Biden's goals for 30 by 30, which if you don't know is his administration's goal to protect 30% of land, air, and water by the year 2030. And I think this landscape absolutely fits into that agenda and that work. That said, the grassroots work still has to be done to make the case for supporting it. And we have to elevate it to the Department of Interior, Secretary Holland, and the president's attention. Yes, John, a project for the open pit mine of this magnitude would absolutely need a full-scale environmental impact statement. There's no way they could cover all the things they would need to cover for that in an environmental assessment. And the Ridgecrest BLM, I don't think, would try to do that. But we're not there yet. We're at their next step, which is the road construction exploration. And that will likely come in the form of an environmental assessment with additional opportunities known as scoping to make your voice heard. And you'll hear from us on that. Well, I'll answer Sarah's question real quick, and then we can bump down. But Sarah, I think it's kind of a nuanced question of how much our society needs gold. I will say, about 13% is somewhere in 13 to 15% is used for electronics. The rest is used for jewelry. The rest is used for investments and federal reserves. And then the little bit that's left is used in technology. But that said, alternatives are being found every other month, it seems, for gold and technology. So it's being outdated pretty quickly as far as the tech uses go. So even that 13 to 14%, I don't think that validates, a mine at Conglomerate Mesa, the use for it in tech. It's a relatively small amount that is becoming obsolete by the day.
I'll just read this last one, which is related to 30 by 30. What does this area offer that DEVA does not? I'm assuming maybe that's Death Valley. And how the unique cultural and resource values of Conglomerate Mesa be part of the 30 by 30 initiative. Just to briefly speak to that, I believe we're about 12% or less towards that 30 by 30. And as you know, 2030 is less than 10 years away. So there's a lot of lands still to be protected, which is an ambitious goal, but it seems as though the Biden administration has committed to that. And so that leaves things looking good for us in terms of this is a area that's been protected for a long time. We just need to make the proper relationships, legislation getting introduced and getting it on the radar of the Secretary of Interior and hopefully bipartisan Congress as well. That's a part of this. We don't quite know where our new Republican congressman stands, who is Jay Obernolt from District 8 of California. But it definitely fits within the 30 by 30 goals of the Biden administration.
Um, got a lot of questions coming in, so we'll try to get to everyone we can and address some pertinent ones. Maria asks, can we meet our gold needs from existing mines? I would need to see a specific kind of supply and demand analysis, but my what I would say is the amount of empty gold mines that we have sitting out there that get active again when gold prices go high. I think why not turn to areas already impacted? Why not turn to lands that you can repurpose, and whether it's looking at old tailings or just a new spot on land on a landscape that's already impacted, rather than pristine wildlands. So that would be my first answer to that is let's look to areas that are already impacted if we even truly needed more gold. But I think we have enough in our federal reserves and stored up that kind of a shorter answer would be no.
Mhm. I think it's a very relevant question. Maybe Bryan and I can tag team this one. Currently, is LADWP a friend or foe? Second, how can we start addressing this with LADWP? I think, as Bryan alluded to with Pondgate, they turned out to be a friend in the case of K2 slash Mojave Precious Metals wanting to take water from the golf course in Lone Pine. As DWP knows how valuable water is in the Eastern Sierra. So um, we don't have any evidence that they've been supporting this and working with them, but it remains to be seen because we do believe they're frankly the only reliable source of water, unless someone else thinks there's another. What do you think, Bryan? Anything to add there?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is, I would kind of lump my strategy logic with LADWP the same as the Ridgecrest Field Office. We have a duty and responsibility to simply provide them with information and say, this is the next step. This is what's being proposed. This is what someone might look for you to do. And then they have their job and duties as an agency to carry out the laws and whatnot that they have to. So we keep in good contact as we do with all of our partners. So we'll let LADWP know as this project is progressing. I know that they're absolutely interested in it and how it moves forward. That said, I don't think that they can take formal stances just yet. And if someone was to come to them requesting water, then that would be another ball game. But we would tackle that when it comes. And I don't think it'll come too soon, but it could be here before we know it.
Well, just a little time check. We're at 7:29. Any other questions? I think we're at our 90-minute mark, and we'd love to give y'all back some of your evening. And we truly appreciate you spending your evening with us learning about Conglomerate Mesa. Thank you all for joining us. We appreciate it, and thanks for moving forward with us in this process and our efforts together. We can make a big difference. So hope you're in the town hall next week.